The following is meant for entertainment and educational purposes. It is not meant to establish a doctor-patient relationship. Please consult your mental health provider for your mental health needs. Hello, welcome to Chez Eric, where we talk about psychiatry and religion with a focus on how to apply it to your life. My name is Dr. Eric. I'm a psychiatrist who happens to be religious, and we are finalizing the William James series with the postscript of what William James writes about after his lecture series 1 through 20. So I wasn't originally going to do a postscript because I thought it was just a postscript. Who reads the end part anyway? But I found that all of the summaries and the help books and everything on William James seem to have a little blurb about the postscript, and all the meaty stuff is there, but the postscript seems to be at least important enough to write a little sentence. And I figured, I went through introduction and lectures 1 through 20, so I might as well do the postscript just to finalize everything, or else maybe like 2 years from now, someone's going to be playing, where's the postscript? Where's the postscript? It's like, okay, fine, I'll just do it. And I read it, it's quick, it's pretty simple, I suppose, but it actually has deep implications, and William James at the end kind of talks about how it could very well be worth another book or another lecture series or something to that extent. So what does he talk about in the postscript? Well, the first thing William James outlines about reflections on things he didn't get a chance to talk about was, the first thing is the idea of different types of supernaturalists, meaning two types, which is the crasser or piecemeal type and the refined type. And he describes that the crasser type of supernaturalist, the type of person who would believe in supernatural things, believe in God and divinity and things like that. They're the types to believe in it and see it in their lives, but they may not necessarily understand how it fits in the larger scope of things. They may not understand the great implications of what this means for morality, for society. They just know that the divine interacts with them in their life in a piecemeal, in a specific sort of way. And this is in contrast to the refined type, where it seems like they do have a very robust understanding of the beliefs of the supernatural, and they have, let's say, made perhaps a lot of theological and philosophical concepts that intertwine with each other and how everything fits together. However, they will generally kind of see the ideal world, the ideal space, the divine space, as separate from our current space in real life. And then we judge our current life based on what happens in the ideal. And that is how he kind of describes the two. So which one is he? Which one's better? Well, he personally feels that he is of the crasser type. And he doesn't really like the refined type of the supernaturalism, because as we talked about in lecture, I forget which one, the philosophy one, the crasser type, the more universalistic type, the one that tries to bring everything together and have one major theory, has a tendency to remove itself from reality, to remove its practical value to the individual. And so he himself says he is more inclined to believe the crasser type, not to believe, but be part of the crasser type of supernaturalist, the crasser type of, I guess, religious person who believes that God exists. But, James recognizes that this belief, this crasser type of supernaturalism, it's not that popular among his academic circles, among his friends that gossip with each other about all this sort of heady stuff. And that's why he felt like he needed to take some time to explain his position and to explain his ideas in a little bit more detail. Although, as he writes about it, he's like, maybe I should make this a whole book. Maybe I should write this a lot more. He kind of goes into saying that the reason why he believes in the crasser type is because he wants to connect this supernatural concept with our life. That there needs to be a way for this supernatural thing to interact with our life in a meaningful way. And the way he proposes going about doing this is through an understanding of what he says, prayerful communications, basically prayer. And we talked a lot about prayer before. And why is prayerful communication important? Well, because he says that in this space of prayerful communication, you can have an ideal understanding of the divine, of God, and it interacts with you on a personal level such that you actually make fundamental changes in your life in a personal way. And that is how the ideal settings or the ideal concepts helps you in a personal way. And that's how William James would say this all comes into play with the divine and the personal, and that's how God comes into our lives. However, what do other people say? How do other people explain how God comes into their life? Well, he points out that most people would say that God comes into your life in the form of a personal immortality, a promise that you will live forever, a promise that there is a life beyond death. And he says that religion is synonymous with immortality. Like, we believe in religion because we want to live forever, or at least the Judeo-Christian version of that, or at least a Christian one. I guess not Judeo. I don't know the distinction at this point in time. But we have to recognize that he points out that this idea of immortality, this everlasting life, we don't have a lot of facts about it. We don't have a lot of people coming back from the dead, although we have Christianity, we have Jesus coming back from the dead and stuff like that, right? Resurrecting. But we don't have a lot of people doing that, okay? A handful of cases, presumably. And so he kind of says that this is not something that it really helps with in a practical sense, because you can have this promise of immortality later, but if we don't interact with this divine entity in a meaningful way right now in this life, then what are we trying to do? He looks at this, he investigates this more and talks about this idea of an ideal power, right? A divine entity, a very powerful entity, and we ascribe certain attributes to this divine entity. And the attributes we ascribe to it is that it is infinite, and it is only one, and is all powerful, and that is what this divine entity is. However, he actually makes a very, very interesting takes a very interesting direction to say, that when we interact with this divine being, we can't actually tell whether it's infinite or just really, really, really big, right? And in the past, we had divine beings that were just really, really big, like Greek mythology gods and stuff like that. And they used to just, you worship Aphrodite for love and Ares for war, and you did all these things. And that was sufficient for us at that time period. And then it wasn't sufficient after that. And then he kind of talks about, one, we can't really tell whether this divine being we're interacting with is actually infinite. And two, there could be a possibility that there's multiple pluralistic views, or sort of multiple pluralism, like we just believe in multiple divine beings. He's not proposing that we believe in multiple divine beings, but he's trying to demonstrate that what we currently understand about this infinite, we don't necessarily have evidence of the infinite. So then why do we believe in this infinite and one and only divine being? And he says that the reason why we believe in an infinite and one and only divine being, as opposed to just a bunch of little tiny beings, is because we want to have an all-encompassing and all-inclusive sense of salvation, right? Because when you have a bunch of little mini gods, so to speak, you might have gaps in between those mini gods. And therefore, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't help you, because if you miss out in the in-between, like, this God can't help me here, it's not all-powerful, I need to go this one. Okay, these two gods are not all-powerful, therefore I have this gap in between, I need another God to fill in that gap. It doesn't seem to be the thing that we would want, and that's the allure of having the infinite and having one. However, he talks about this idea of this perfect salvation, right? And that for all practical purposes in real life, we don't actually interact with this concept of perfect salvation, right? Because with perfect salvation, for its perfect salvation of the world, everybody needs to play ball, everybody needs to do the right thing and be saved. That's how you save the world. But in reality, what we really have is more of an imperfect salvation. We have the promise of salvation. We have the chance of salvation. That if you do certain things, then you may be saved. And that is how it plays out, because we have people who were, let's say, sinners in the past, and they're told, if you do X, Y, Z and give up certain things and do certain things, then you can be saved, right? That person may believe that is an absolute, salvation. But in all practical purposes, it's almost a partial salvation, because there's a lack of purity in the past. Of course, this goes against Christian theology. I'm not gonna get into that, right? But I am saying that that's James's point of view. The idea is that we are going for this concept of the infinite, yet we can't really understand the infinite, because this divine entity interacting with us could very well just be really, really big, but not necessarily infinite. But we want the infinite because we want that certain level of certainty. We want that certain level of all-encompassing sort of salvation. But he points out that because we have limited understandings of ourselves, and we have a subconscious, and we have our own personal views and perspectives and our own personal interaction with the divine, that what we really have is a partial salvation that is based on chance. So for example, if you just happened to be born in the right religion, to worship the right God, to do the right thing, right, then you're saved, right? Or if you happen to have the right idea or the right concept, right, you might be saved, right? And it is ultimately a chance. And this is where he is very radical with this idea, which might be the reason why his ideas didn't really catch on beyond the academic sphere, because he's proposing that for understanding the science of religion, he says we need to take a more pluralistic viewpoint more seriously. And what does that mean? Well, it means that perhaps we should understand that there could be multiple theories happening at the same time, and that we just don't have enough evidence to know which one is right. So that when we interact with each other in this religious space, we recognize that there's a personal religion that we have to understand and interact with God or the divine in our personal way, and that's limited to us, and that's important to us. And as long as it has fruits for us, then it's okay and it's good for us. But it's going to be very difficult to have an all-encompassing, expansive, universal of religion, because that begins to pull away from the practical benefits that William James really, really wants to support and promote and sort of emphasize. So that he's not necessarily saying we should believe in many, many gods. What he's saying is that we should be cognizant, and we should recognize that there is a possibility that we might not have it right, but that it is with our experience and the fruits of what in our beliefs that helps us know what to do next. But no matter what, it still might not be right, but that's okay, because in all practical purposes, we do have this partial sense of that salvation. So, I hope you like that. I hope you enjoyed the series. I'm going to do a final thoughts at the end. In hindsight, I suspect this is going to be a very controversial topic if anybody reads this, because a lot of Christian groups, a lot of religious groups have certainty at the core of their beliefs, whereas William James pulls away from that sense of certainty. It might make people angry. That's fine. Let me know your anger below. And if you're not angry, let me know you're not anger below. And I'll talk to you next time. Hey, sign up for my weekly newsletter. I send out emails every week on psychiatry and religion. I realize that email is a great way to go deep into these topics. So if you want more content, check out chesericpurl.com and subscribe over there. Thanks.